All right, we're taking a trip back to the Second World War. But this isn't your typical war story. Nope, we're headed to Somalia for a truly bizarre tale about a British officer and his complete and utter obsession with a game.
Well, you get one of the most unbelievable Christmas Day stories you've probably ever heard. And that's really the heart of this whole thing, right? What happens when a guy's love for a sport just completely blots out the massive global war happening all around him? Okay, so let's introduce our main character. His name is Lieutenant Douglas Tatham Collins. He's a young British officer, and believe me, in the middle of a war zone, he had one and only one thing on his mind.
And he was not shy about it at all. I mean, he wrote it down himself. For him, it wasn't about the war or the empire. It was all cricket all the time. And you really have to get that obsession to understand just how wild this story gets.
And this just lays it all out perfectly. The disconnect is just staggering. You've got these world-changing, history-making battles going on. Stalingrad, Guadalcanal. And what's on Collins's mind? Planning a Christmas cricket match. He's not worrying about supply lines for the troops in Russia. He's literally figuring out how to ship a coconut mat for a pitch to the middle of nowhere in Africa. It's just, wow.
So, to give you a bit of context, Collins shows up in Mogadishu in the summer of '41. The British had just kicked the Italian fascists out of the territory. And his job? Basically to help run this huge new piece of land as part of the local police force, the Somali Gendarmerie.
And this, right here, this gives you a real peek inside his head. It shows you just how deep this cricket obsession went. His best memory in life? Not his family, not his home, nope. It was scoring a century, that's 100 runs, in a cricket match back in 1939. He literally saw the world through a cricket filter. Get this. He described his commanding officer's face as being the color of an old, well-worn cricket ball. I mean, who does that? This was the guy they put in charge.
All right, so it's 1942, and Collins gets transferred. And we're not talking about a cushy new post. He's sent all by himself, with just a platoon of local soldiers, to a super remote outpost. And it's out here, in the middle of nowhere, that he comes up with this grand, frankly bonkers idea for Christmas Day.
He literally called his new post the furthest shag of the Never Never Land. So what do you pack when you're headed there? Well, if you're DT Collins, you pack some booze, your entire cricket bag, and, this is the best part, a giant roll of coconut matting to use as a cricket pitch. Of course you do.
So he gets there, and his orders for his sergeant, a guy named Haji Dadaf, are simple, almost ridiculously simple. He's like, okay, step 1, build a cricket pitch. Step 2, I'll teach everyone how to play. Step 3, this will stop all the local squabbling. You know, just a classic, simple, very British solution to what was a really complex local issue.
And that's the key word right there, fatina. It's a local term for all the constant fighting and squabbling between the tribes. And Collins, he honestly, genuinely believed that the rules and the gentlemanly spirit of cricket could fix all of it. I mean, it's such a colonial-era idea, and, well, it's about to crash headfirst into reality.
Which brings us to the main event, the absolute heart of this story, the Christmas Day match. And let me tell you, this thing is one for the ages.
So just try to picture this scene. It's 3 o'clock on Christmas afternoon. There's an oval marked out in the sand, that coconut matting pitch is rolled out, and then out strolls Collins decked out in his full cricket whites, his club tie, the whole shebang. He's ready for the coin toss. It must have been a sight to see.
The game starts and it descends into chaos immediately. One of the local guys, an Ascaro, comes running in to bowl, but then he just stops and hurls the ball like he's throwing a spear. And Collins, being the cricket nut that he is, his mind immediately goes to the infamous bodyline bowling scandal from the 30s. Of course it does. And this is where things just go completely off the rails. Any rulebook he had just got thrown out the window. So, a batter hits the ball, and nobody moves. Nobody goes to get it. The players just explain that, hey, that kind of physical work, that's for another tribe to do. So what's Collins' solution? He brings in prisoners from the local jail to be the fielders, including a guy who was an alleged murderer and, surprise, surprise, wasn't too keen on chasing the ball. You just can't make this stuff up.
But the peak of the chaos, the absolute high point, comes when Collins is bowling to Carlo. Carlo is the local Italian lighthouse keeper who Collins roped into being the other team's captain. The ball zips up the bat and smacks Carlo right on the nose. Blood goes everywhere. He just bolts, screaming in Italian, "Oh God, bad, very bad," and apparently nobody saw him again for a month.
So after all of that, what was the final score? You're not going to believe this. It was a tie. Both teams managed to score exactly 57 runs. It's the only way a game that insane could have ended, right? Afterwards, the entire village celebrated by feasting on the fattest camel in town. A perfectly surreal ending to a surreal day.
Okay, so the match is over. But what about the whole point of it? Did Collins's cricket experiment actually work? And what happened to the man himself? I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? After all that effort, did cricket actually become the new big thing in northern Somalia?
The answer is a hard no. In fact, it was the exact opposite. His own sergeant ended up reporting back to headquarters that the locals were complaining about this, and I'm quoting here, torture called cricket. They actually said this new British lieutenant was worse than the Italian fascists he replaced. So yeah, he got transferred out of there pretty quick.
So Collins's big idea to stay and cure the tribal fatina with cricket, yeah, that was denied. He did later admit that his Somali troops just liked football more because, well, cricket, they did not like. He actually stayed in Africa long after the war, kind of a man out of his time. He died alone at a remote outpost in Kenya in 1999, and someone called him a relic of a lost imperial world. It's a pretty sad and lonely end to the story.
But maybe to understand why he did it all, we can look at this quote. It's from the famous Wisden Cricketer's Almanac, the Bible of Cricket, published in 1942, the very same year as his match. And it basically says that cricketers, even during a war, should seize the fleeting hour to bat and bowl.
And you know what? That's exactly what D.T. Collins did. And one of the most remote places you can imagine, during the darkest days of World War II, for better or for worse, he followed that advice to the absolute letter. It's just this bizarre, totally failed, but somehow completely unforgettable story in the history of both the war and the game of cricket.